Welcome to the first episode of Recorrelated podcast. We did have an intro that we are having technical difficulties with. We are testing in production, so my bad.
Blame Hollis.
This whole day has just been my bad, so whatever. Here we go. So I am Natalie Baker. I'm going to be your MC for this podcast. And I'll probably be the most awkward MC ever. You might remember me as the sock queen back in the day. So I am back, rebranded, and I bring two new co-hosts. I guess I should point this way. Two new co-hosts along for the ride with me. So first up, August, I think you have a really great story coming from. Weren't you like a conductor for a railroad at one point?
I did work for a Class 1 railroad before I got into security. So my interest in cyber started before I was in the Air Force, but the Air Force had other plans. As any veteran knows, it's not what you want to do, it's what the service wants you to do. I started with Union Pacific in 2017. I actually got laid off and decided that I didn't want to be away from my family. So I went back to school, and I had been applying for jobs in cyber, but the gist of it is most entry level cybers want you to have a minimum of 2 to 3 years of IT experience, right? Bare minimum. So I decided to stop applying to jobs and put the majority of my effort into certification studying, which I was in a boot camp at the time. I can talk about that later, but uh, I grew my network from about 500 to 5,000 in 4.5, 5 months. And my actual first job in cyber started as a paid internship through a random message on LinkedIn. And that's why I'm here.
Awesome. And then we bring along Hollis Henderson, and then after he introduces himself a little bit, I'm going to kind of segue into how all three of us know each other because I think that's a really hilarious story. So, Hollis, go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, so I originally started my journey when I was in the Army as a 25 uniform or a 25 useless. I was the jack of all trades, master of none when it came to communications, radios, high frequency, and a little bit of networking. There was a specific radio called the Rifleman radio, and it basically used hops. And so it would use an IP address and hop from radio to radio and retransmit the signal. From there, I took that and I wanted to know how networks work. I always loved video games. I loved how Xbox worked. I loved seeing people hack into like Call of Duty lobbies and voice chats. So that led me into IT, and I got my first gig as a help desk. From there, I met a couple cyber guys and a couple network guys, and the network guys were always so chill. The network guys they knew. They were like, hey, there's a packet, it goes somewhere, and I know how it gets there. So that led to me eventually getting to how it actually traversed, and then automation. The systems guys picked me up from there, and I began automating. And now I make really bad NetMiko scripts that you can check out anytime you want on my profile. But that led me here. I love trying to defend networks and build them. I probably don't build the best ones, but they stand up to time. But that is my story.
Awesome. So how we all three met was kind of weird, and it's really hilarious because I actually was connected with August first, who I am probably going to call Austin if I haven't already. But I will try to keep that to a minimum. But I connected with August first, and then he ended up at one point he had posted I was a headhunting on LinkedIn doing what I normally do and just being stealthy on LinkedIn looking to find talent for my team at the time. And you actually said, like, if you want somebody who's really great with networks and network security and all that, in a post and tagged Hollis. And then I ended up hiring Hollis and have actually met Hollis in person and stuff like that. And I still have not met August in person.
Soon.
The power of LinkedIn. So we thank you all for all the help that you have given us. We are hopeful that by the next time we air our next episode, that we will have enough followers to go live on our page. we appreciate you moving along with us through these difficulties that we've been having. We had a fun time backstage before the podcast started. So I can see some comments out. So thank you to everyone. I know my network stepped up. I know August, your network stepped up. Hollis, your network stepped up. Like all of our networks, like really helped us get. I think we grew more today in podcast followers than we have on any of the other days combined. So we appreciate you so much. And let's get on into it. So when I ran SOC before, I had this issue where I saw others who weren't necessarily in like a management position that kind of just stepped their way. Like they kind of were like back talking to entry level talent or not talking nicely to entry level talent. And I literally had to pull a couple of them aside and was like, hey, dude, like, we can't talk to our talent like that because they look up to you. So, like, you need to start acting right. And a lot of the times, these people, they were like, I didn't realize I was a leader. And I was like, well, people look up to you. So now you are a leader. Welcome to leadership. If you didn't know you were in leadership, now you are. And August, I know that you've had some experience with helping train people and all that. So go ahead and give me your take on how do you intervene when one of your coworkers is talking down to someone who's like brand new?
I haven't quite experienced that in cyber yet. I've been pretty lucky in that aspect that every team that I worked on, in my total of 2 jobs, that everyone's been really willing to help. But pulling from military experience, hell, even the Union Pacific, the railroad has a really big bias towards, they're called orange hats, essentially a junior analyst in cyber, that you don't know what the hell you're doing until you've been railroading for like a year. And I think that people forget that we all started from the bottom, right? None of us came in being experts at this. And my take on it is I would rather build a relationship with someone that's either underneath you or you work alongside with, because cyber teams are small in every organization, outside of like Palo Alto or somewhere where it's their job is cybersecurity. Like that's all they do, like MSPs. But on internal teams that are really small, there's not time for someone to belittle another analyst or someone that's next to them, because you doing that is going to ruin them wanting to come to you for help. And we don't have time for that. There's more criminals than there are of us, and they only have to be right once. We have to be right 24/7.
All the time. Hollis, how about you? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so in my time coming up from help desk, I looked up to a lot of sysadmins and, as I said earlier, network guys and some of the security individuals. It was really pertinent in those spaces to see people that wanted to hold their knowledge and not see someone grow in those situations. For example, there were times when I would go to a sysadmin and I would say, hey, this is my PowerShell script. Can you look at it? Can you help me figure out exceptions or how I can make this better? And, it was that situation of Stack Overflow in real life. So I just kind of to the wayside. So I stuck to the books. But now in this current situation and in this current environment, since I'm a senior network analyst now, and I've been able to have the time to train individuals and meet with them, there's a thing that I always try to push out now is that I don't want someone to be me. I don't want someone to have to deal with the situation I was in. And so if I see someone in my position or another position doing something like that, I generally say, hey, think about it when you first started IT. Think about when you first got into this space, and think about how you felt, and think about those moments where you were lost, where you've been searching Stack Overflow for like 4 hours. There's not an answer. Of course, now we have AI, but that's different, right? AI can't sometimes tell you that you suck, but with that, right? I generally just try to remind them like, hey, you started here. They're starting now. If you take the time and nurture them, they can help you, right? They can take your everyday work and make it easier, make it better. They can make you think of solutions that weren't there previously. Right now,
Yep.
I have an individual that I work with, Matthew Johnson. He's amazing, right? I started helping him with some of the labs and thinking of how to drive a packet. And from there, like I've watched his troubleshooting skills like exponentially increase. And my workload went from this massive, I'm troubleshooting all this to just this. And if more people thought that way, I think it would do the industry a lot better. So,
Yep. So when I was coming up through, I had the first person I ever worked under, bless his soul, because like this poor man had to deal with me asking. I was a paralegal, man. I was not IT, and I had a sergeant major that was like, I think you'd do really good in IT. And I was like, Sergeant Major, you've never even met me. You literally looked at the paper, but nothing else. Like, what do you mean? And I was like, I don't think this is a good idea. This is a terrible idea. They're putting like the least technical person in a technical position. And I was like, this is going to be a train wreck. And then I had this mentor, his name's Dave Holshoe, still really close with him after all this time. And he was a very gifted, systems engineer, system admin. He wore a lot of different hats. And he literally would just like push me to go research for myself. So first thing he did for me was he was like, did you Google that yet? And I was like, the first few times I was like, no. And he's like, at a certain point, he's like, yeah, you should probably Google anything before you need to bring it to me. And I was like, okay, cool. So like I'd go and start like researching. And like without his help though, like I wouldn't be where I'm at, which is why I've never treated entry level that way. And we have Aaron that says cybersecurity is a team sport. If a peer doesn't have what you consider to be your requisite knowledge, then it's like too much. And guess what? Like I've told everybody who's ever been underneath me, like our adversary is the attacker. It's not each other. It's not who's better than who on the team. It's the attacker that's attacking our network or attacking our systems, So use each other and get better. Identify who's better at what tasks, and then learn from that person. And then maybe you have a task that you're better at, and then somebody can learn from you. So it is very much a team sport. What do you think about that analogy, guys?
I agree.
yeah, so I definitely think that there's certain situations where individuals see the team sport and they sometimes take it too far, right? And they'll see the team as their team. And so instead of leading it, they'll just take the situation and run with it. So I will say that the responsibility is as much theirs as it is ours. I'll also say there's some times where we need to reevaluate and not just run. I have this problem sometimes where I'll get a task from a junior, and if they need help with it, I'll run with it, and then I'll forget to help them with it. So there's caveats.
So there's one thing that I learned to do pretty early on was like sometimes I would run with it, but I always tell that to an extent, like I'll take it through across the finish line. But I always tell that person, and my people all know this, every time I'm like, hey, if I forget to show you this or it gets too complex, especially on like the more technical side, remind me to come back to it. Like if we don't circle back to it by the end of the week, like come back to me and remind me so I can explain what we did and why we did what we did. Because sometimes I get it. Sometimes it's just faster to get it done and then go back and explain why. And then they're like, oh yeah, that's right. So it's really important to know that like you don't have to be in management to be in leadership. As soon as people start looking up to you in your company, you're now leadership. And guess what? People don't want to work under people who are jerks. So don't be a jerk in cyber is the theme. And then Mohammed says mentoring and knowledge sharing goes a long way. I would agree 100%. Mentoring and knowledge sharing does go one heck of a long way. So does some empathy and understanding. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I think that he's correct. When you create a single point of failure in your team by not mentoring and not knowledge sharing, that's when things go wrong, when someone takes leave or is off of work or is gone. I've experienced that before, not where I'm at now, but before. You have to knowledge share. You can't be the only person that knows how to do something. It's just like, oh God, a single point of failure. I already said that, but I was trying to find another reference, but I can't think of one right now, so I'm going to pass it off to Hollis.
Yeah, so I'll pull the old army hat here to caveat with the knowledge sharing and a single point of failure. It's so easy to happen. For example, if we have a network architect, and he's the only one that knows the BGP design, and he's the one that built it from its day that it was incepted. You come in, you don't know how it is, you don't know why it is, and then bam, right? You're there one day staring at it going, why isn't this peer talking to this one? Or why is this route not being taken this way? And you're left there. It's a huge outage. There's two sites that can't communicate. I'm not speaking from experience. And
Never.
then you just stare at the wall for a minute and you think to yourself, if only there was some documentation or some tidbit of knowledge that I could take from someone.
You know how I feel about documentation, Hollis. Like, I go through and grade documentation. Like, is your documentation good and solid to where, like, I want to be able to give this to a really smart monkey and they can just take it across the finish line for me because, that kind of ordeal. Like, that way anybody can pick it up and run with it. And it doesn't matter. They don't have to have like 3 weeks of experience, or 3 months of experience to be able to pick it up and run. It's a one small task that once they get good at it, then we'll build on that knowledge later. And I think knowing how to teach entry level, because sometimes it does, it gets super frustrating sometimes when you're like senior and you're like, oh, that's right, you're entry level. I have to explain this to you. And I have to explain this to you in a way that will make sense to you. And so I look at it as it's kind of like a puzzle, putting a puzzle piece together, like a whole puzzle together. Because like when you find what clicks, it's very rewarding to see those aha moments happen. You guys like aha moments?
Everybody likes aha moments.
Those are my favorite things.
I
as a leader.
My favorite thing to see is taking an advanced, and I talk about networking a lot because I'm a networking guy. Taking an advanced networking concept or taking any kind of concepts and using something like driving a packet. I say driving a packet a lot because you are in the driver's seat, and seeing in someone's head and it clicks that, hey, if I'm on a VLAN and I treat it like a highway and this highway intersects at a layer 3 device and that's where I transit, then it all goes home from there. So,
yep. Oh man, sometimes you say layer 3, and I'm like, oh crap. But I get it. I know why you say layer 3 because switch is normally layer 2. Oh, anyway, so Ellie, actually one of my guys on my team. So hello, Ellie. Thanks for joining us as well. Empathy is paramount, and I think that's so important to remember is that like put yourself in their shoes. Just put yourself in their shoes and think about like how would you feel as the entry level person if you were leading or you were showing this new person, if you were the new person and someone like you was training you. And I think not only is empathy important, so is self-reflection as a leader. Like at the end of every week, I personally think back through all my interactions and I am like, okay, what did I do well as a leader this week? What could I improve upon as a leader this week? What can I do to make our team better as a team? Not only that, personality-wise as a team, but also like what can we do to make their lives easier? And when you centralize leadership, your leadership style around other people, like around people in your charge, I found that it gets the best results. That's my personal opinion. Go for it, August.
We're talking about empathy is paramount. So this goes back to security teams being small, right? Like even companies of 3,000 people, your security team's going to be between 10 and 30 people typically, right? Depending on the maturity level of the organization. So it's Muhammad's pet alligator, squirrel. So we already work in a high stress job function, right? Alert fatigue, GRC documentation, networking's down, all the above, right? If you're taking your stress out and on your team or not being empathetic to their stress level, you're going to drive them away. And that's why empathy is paramount, because the state of the market right now in security, if someone has a year, I have 2 years, right over 2 years, the opportunities for that level are almost, once you're in about where I'm at, are almost endless as to where you can go. And if you're not empathetic to your team, it doesn't matter how much you're going to pay them, they're going to leave. And that's going to create more stress on you and more stress on your team, and it really can lead to a waterfall effect. But that's what I have to say.
Yeah, so
Go ahead.
having empathy with your team or having empathy with individuals around you, it leads to a better team culture. It leads to you being able to connect more with those individuals. There's a lot of people that you meet in IT, and I will say in a way that they are generally very to themselves and they are very quiet and they won't speak up. Being able to read that situation, read the person, i.e., I'm using empathy in a different way here, but you can bring the best out of them. You can bring more out of them. You can bring more knowledge from them. Being able to take who they are and how they bring themselves and take that further and help them shine, it will really drive culture. It's absolutely something that I strive for, and I'll bring up some of my juniors again. Even so much as having empathy to the fact of we all need time off. I get super stressed. I have upgrades coming all the time. If someone says, "Hey, I would like to take this day. Are you going to be there?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm always here, right? The phone's here. I'm here. If you need me, you got me, right?" So, but that's my take.
Yeah, I would agree. Like positive work culture just makes going to work more fun or more enjoyable, right? Like if you can have a really great culture amongst your team and like you all have the camaraderie, it just makes such a difference of the quality of work that you want to do. Also, remembering people are human, they need PTO, they need time off, and planning for that ahead and saying, "Hey, are you doing okay? Like, how's it going?" Every so often is super, super important because sometimes people show stress in different ways. And we'll get into the psychology of people later on with a guest in the future. We have so many comments. My goodness. August, do you want to take over on the comments there?
I can do that.
Cool. Thanks. And then recognizing people's potential, like understand this. People are 10 times more smarter than you give them credit for, or than they give themselves credit for. So like being able to recognize talent and being able to recognize potential really allows for you to have a more robust team because that outside person has never seen this before and they're going to bring a different perspective from a different, at this point, it's some of us it's from high school, or some of us it's from college and just life experience. But they're always going to bring a different point of view into the circle. Past careers, like I've brought so much of my GRC knowledge comes from like knowing how to read laws. So being able to recognize people's potential. What's your thoughts on that, Hollis? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll actually take a different point if you don't mind. Bringing that different perspective. Something that I'll say there is that bringing an outside view and an outside perspective, you can really drive security or drive any kind of situation. For example, if you come into an organization and they have kiosks that are on a VLAN that has direct access to your infrastructure, and they set up a software, and the software doesn't actually lock down access, right? It doesn't lock down whether they can close the application or whatever else. It's one thing for them to look at it and say, yeah, that is secure, but it's another thing for someone to look at it and say, okay, well, what if you looked at it from an attacker's point of view? Like, what's the first thing I'm going to do? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get on the system. And from there, once I have a foothold, I'm going to say, can I close this application? Can I do something else here? And just bringing that situation of how can I take it further, and how can I help you take it further? Outside perspectives really allow you to take any situation and expand upon it 1,000 times. Whether or not that's security or whether or not you're talking about dinosaurs, I think any situation, right? A good conversation is always going to have really weird perspectives. So,
Go for it, August.
I missed what we were talking about. Can you restate the question?
No, don't worry about it, because I don't remember what it was, honestly, at this point. Yeah, and having different cultures represented, having different thoughts represented, having different like neurodiverse people, regularly all types of different diversity. It just makes you a stronger team. Sorry, we are all three neurodivergent people, so we kind of go off on little side quests sometimes. I'm pretty positive about that.
we all have tangents, and
so one of our things on this podcast, you're going to hear us say it a lot, it's going to be nuggets of knowledge. And I forgot to introduce this idea earlier, which I wanted to. But usually about this time, we're probably going to start winding it down. We'll wait a little bit later, but throughout the podcast, for all the future episodes as well, once you've thought about something new or you learned something new, put a little nugget of knowledge. We're going to hashtag nugget of knowledge. That we want to get that circulating because I think that would be a lot of fun. But basically, I feel that we can always learn how to be better leaders from every person that we've crossed paths with. And maybe it's a discussion that we have on here. Anytime you learn something new, just put hashtag nugget of knowledge and give us the nugget of knowledge that you've learned or that you've taken away from this episode and future episodes. I hope that we can get that going. But what are your thoughts on like diversity and inclusion, August?
I'm for it. I think that if you hire for the same mindset, same whatever you want to call it, you're only going to have one way of thinking. And that obviously leads to failure too, because if you're all doing the same thing and all thinking the same way, you're not going to call out each other's mistakes. And obviously not all of us are going to be good at one thing or another, but everyone has their strengths. And if you don't include different mindsets, different backgrounds, different cultures, then you're all going to be doing the same thing. And when something drastic happens that you don't know how to solve, you can draw on your different backgrounds to maybe have a different mindset that would be able to solve it. But outside of that, if you're all the same, nothing's going to get done, or you're all going to do the same thing and it's going to fail.
Yeah, you don't have people questioning why. And when you question the process, that is something I actually like really I've always done and didn't realize that's what I was doing. But you need to question the process that you have in place, because like just because we've always done it this way doesn't mean that we need to continue to do it this way if there's a better way. So that is I think that's really important. Hey, Hollis, what about you?
Yeah, so hiring individuals and bringing in teams that are from different backgrounds and different cultures, you really get an essence of people that could potentially come from, I could say, dangerous situations that are highly stressful. And so you really can add to a team in the fact that if you can find someone like that, or if you have someone that comes from that kind of background, you can lean on them in situations where something's burning, right? You can lean into them for that support. And with that, when you're building a team that has individuals from all walks of life, you're really adding to the fact of cybersecurity is going to have people attacking you from all walks of life. And so if you can defend with that, you're really just taking that mindset and applying it in a different way. You're taking that brain and you're adding wrinkles. So
Yep. That's exactly it. You have to outsmart your attacker. So that's how you do it. Get a lot of different people. All right. So we are going to start wrapping up. Just again, another announcement to let you all know, we still need 150 followers. So if you could share or comment on our posts, we would greatly appreciate it, so that by next time we will be able to go live on our actual LinkedIn page. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. August, give me your nugget of knowledge for the day.
Oh God, I'm unprepared for this.
All right, Hollis, go. Where are you gonna go?
I've learned to perform the 5 P's of planning.
What are the 5
I don't
Ps of
remember what those
planning?
are, so I'm just gonna roll with that.
Do you see what I have to put up with all the time? Oh.
I've learned that no matter how well you prepare for something, you always need a backup plan because of things like this that happened to us today. And learn, especially in security, and you can relate this to 0 days, you can have the best laid out plan, but if someone breaks a 0 day, it all goes to shit. So diversity built what is I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm done for the moment.
Okay. Well, thanks. Great nuggets of knowledge. I love how awkward we all three are. So this is probably just like hilarious for everybody that's watching. Yeah, so I learned about resiliency today, and also, pivoting is a must, especially today. It's just the day of pivoting, nonstop since like 5:30 this morning. I've been just pivoting. So learning how to pivot and to kind of just like hold your composure as you pivot today. That is my nugget of knowledge, is resiliency, because I guess that's the theme you're all going with. Oh man, you guys make me laugh. So with that in mind, we will be back in 2 weeks. Hopefully have a lot of our issues sorted out, and it will be much more fluid. Hopefully, fingers crossed. There's no promises. And we will have our very first special guest on not next week, but 2 weeks from now. So what, the 14th, I think it is. We will be live again with Quinlan Roscoe, and we will be talking about the difference between leadership, mentorship, and management. So we hope you join us then, and we will see you on the 14th. Thanks, all.
Thank y'all for coming out.